Welcome everyone to this session, which is using your restored voice in advocacy. And this is a session where restored citizens who are using their expertise because of their experience to have a discussion on how to use your voice as a restored citizen to advocate on behalf of formerly incarcerated people at the local, state, and national levels. We are grateful to have with us this morning Dr. Patrice Palmer, who is with the Franklin County Office of Justice Policies and Programs. She is also the founder of a nonprofit organization called Chosen for Change. And we also have Robin Turner, who is with the Ohio Organizing Collaborative. And finally, we have Dr. Zaria Davis, who is joining us from Cincinnati. And she is with the Pretrial Justice Institute. My name is Amelia Boomershine. I'm in Dayton, and I'm a deacon in the United Methodist Church who's been working with justice-involved people for about 10 years. Much of that time, all of that time actually, I've been going inside in ministry with people who are incarcerated, especially women at the jail and in Dayton Correctional Institution, prison for women here. But all of that stopped in March because of the pandemic, and I turned some of my energies then into advocacy, which I've always felt were very important, but this pandemic kind of created space to get more involved with that. So I'm very, very happy that we're having this session, and I welcome the three of you to be with us. Let's see, Dr. Palmer, you're in the Cleveland area, correct? Yep. And
I'm in Columbus.
Columbus, sorry, Columbus. All right. And Ms. Turner, where are you?
I'm in Cleveland.
You're in Cleveland. Okay, I knew somebody was in Cleveland. All right.
I'm in Cleveland, yes.
So we're covering the state very well.
Yes, yes.
Our format's going to be, I have about 5 questions, and so I'll just ask a question and let each of you address it. However you'd like. If you want to have some conversation around that, that'll be fine. We only have an hour, so I'm going to try to move us through those questions so we can try to cover them all, and also leave some time for any questions that arise from our audience. So the first question, let's see. Let's start with the working definitions of advocacy and justice. How do each of you define these terms, and what do you believe the outcome should be regarding effective advocacy efforts? Let's see, Dr. Okay, all right, Robin.
So I can kick us off. So for me, advocacy, I know when I was incarcerated, I used to always say I wanted to advocate for the women who wasn't able to advocate for themselves. So for me, advocacy is it supports or defends or pleads on behalf of others. It's also like public support for or recommendation of a particular cause or policy. So, just being able to fight for people who at some particular point isn't able to fight for themselves. Now, am I answering the justice piece as well? Okay. And for me, justice, I want to just speak on it in the broadest sense, is, basically the principle that people receive that which they deserve just behavior or treatment. Now, for myself, justice hasn't been just. So I just look at that word particularly different in regards to, the judicial system.
And I'll kind of go because I'm aligned with Robin on that. So I'm in the Cincinnati area, and thankfully with my work, I'm able to travel throughout the state of Ohio and work with awesome people like the 2 panelists I'm with today. And when I think about advocacy, I think about utilizing my voice and empowering other people to utilize their voices to really address systems change. And that could be locally, statewide, nationally. And then focusing on the one thing I've learned, like in my transition home, I initially wanted to do programming. And one of my mentors said to me, the change comes with policy change. And so I've learned in my 3.5 years home that utilizing my voice to really advocate for change in policies, in the laws, is how advocacy can be used. And when we talk about justice, I struggle with that word as well. I haven't seen a justice system to really say what I think. I know the definition, right, of justice, but I haven't seen that. I don't know what it really looks like. And as we talk about some of the other questions that are laid out, you know, I think even when we talk about how the response for COVID was in our jails and prisons, some people got out because of who they knew, and some people who had medical conditions and were, you know, aging and things like that couldn't get out. So is that just? You know, so I question even that definition of just. I understand that it's supposed to be equitable, right? And there's supposed to be it's supposed to be a space where people have feel that they have their rights have been addressed or respected in a process. But I don't see that here in our country, and I don't see it here in our state. So I've struggled quite a bit with the word justice because I see more injustice, a lot of people being mistreated and things not being equitable. And so it's like I have this long list of unjust things. So that is what I would say about that word without going too much longer.
Whew, I'm in total agreement with the both of you, and I promise I won't start out with justice first because I really am ready to just go in there, but I won't. So thank you to the two of you and your comments, because it really is in line with mine. To me, advocacy is about, you know, raising your voice and changing policies and decisions, being able to influence people of power and not being afraid to walk in that door and put it on the table. Advocacy for me, from my perspective, is that I have a responsibility. I have a mandate from God first and foremost, but I have a responsibility to be the voice for those whose voices are not heard. And as we know in criminal justice, a lot of times people's voices are not heard. People want to hear people's stories, and you want to have these little moments, but advocacy is more than that. It's more than just a story. It's about seeing policies change. It's about seeing action. It's about not just being at the table, but being a voice at the table that can influence decisions. And so advocacy to me is one of the most powerful tools that we have as individuals. And anyone with a lived experience of being in this system has that responsibility, and we are the ones that can make that change, right? And I'm gonna leave you this, I wanna give you this quote about advocacy. It says, "It can be difficult to speak truth to power," right? We know that, right? "Circumstances, however, have made doing so increasingly necessary." So it's necessary for us to be that voice. It's necessary for us to raise the awareness, to give people informed information so that they can make changes and make decisions with adequate information. So that would be, you know, what I say about advocacy. Justice, whew, I'm right along with my two sisters here. I struggle with that. And like Dr. Davis said, you know, I can give you a definition of it. Yes, we can. But have we seen fairness? And to me, that's what justice is. When you look at Lady Justice with the scales, and it appears balanced in the picture, but yet do we see the balance in this system, especially with African Americans, especially with our males, and definitely with women in the institutions throughout the world? Are we seeing a fairness and a balance? I don't think so. So I see more injustice than I do justice. And I think we have a lot of work to do, but coming together, I think we're going to make a difference because we have strong advocates, you know, such as, you know, Robin and Zaria that's on here, and other people that's on this call. So I think we're all striving for better justice, but I really don't see a lot of justice right now. And that's all I'm gonna say for now.
Well, that's good. That's a lot. I'm looking down because I'm taking notes on what you're saying. Thank you. Before I do move on to another question, all of the things that you all were saying, especially with regard to justice, kind of made me wonder about, I've heard a lot about restorative justice, and actually I've tried to use a process from restorative justice. Does that, as opposed to retributive justice, do you hear, that distinction in the work that you do? Are those helpful terms? Just a comment on that from each of you, or whoever would like to speak on that.
Well, I can start.
Okay.
So, for me, in regards to restorative justice, my question is always, what are we restoring? Because justice having never been just for us. So I would always use the term transformative justice, because the whole system needs to be transformed in order to make it equal for the Black and brown people. So restorative, what we're restoring. It never was just for us in the beginning.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I
Transformative.
can't keep going after Robin. No, I'm just joking. I think that one of the components that I do like about the restorative justice model is the concept of healing. Mm-hmm. I think that that there has to be healing across the board, and I think that for people who have been in the system, and even prior to, there's a lot of trauma and other things that may be connected to what even led to a person's charge or crime. And so I think that some of the models that I've seen being used and being talked about can be beneficial in some instances. But I think what Robin said is so accurate. Like you have to think about who's participating in these restorative justice spaces, and how is it impacting communities, and how is it impacting all these people's lives that have been taken away by them being incarcerated and getting really long sentences. And I think that when we talk about these alternatives to incarceration and these types of other ways of looking at things, we have to understand how it genuinely impacts Black, brown, poor people. And are these the people who these programs are identifying, or is it people who understand and know about restorative justice, or some of the other ones we're talking about? Because honestly, if I walked into my neighborhood that I'm in right now and asked people if they knew about restorative justice, I'm sure like 99% of them will be like, what is that? All they know is people going to the jail,
right.
So I think that there has to be, education around these types of concepts when we throw them out, because a lot of people don't even know what they are, don't know if it's something that they may qualify for, if that's what you want to say. But I think that that we have to look at a lot of these systemic issues, right? So we have to look at these underlying issues, and until we do that, these types of programs are only going to still identify specific people, and we're going to still leave a lot of people behind.
Thank you. Good.
Well, I can't keep going behind the two of you.
Well, we'll have you go next.
So, and again, I agree with both of my co-facilitators. When I think of restorative justice, again, my first question is, restored to what? What are we restoring? Mm-hmm. When I think of the disparity in the system, and when you look at historically, we look at the damage of the system. Michelle Alexander wrote a book, The New Jim Crow, right. The Age of Color Blindness, and she talked about slavery and mass incarceration, and its beginning, and you look at the disparity of African Americans and people of color from a historical point of view to where we are today. What really has changed? They may change and give it a different name, but yet the intent is still the same: dismantling the home, separating, holding people in a lower you know, a caste system. She talks about a caste system, you know, you're lower than I am, or I'm superior. So to me, when you look at restorative justice, you know, there's a lot of conversation across the country about restorative justice, and everybody gets on board. Again, my question is, restore what? When you look at the impact that it has had on African American communities and people of color, when you look at the impact of it dismantling homes and separating homes and people in poverty and people in poor neighborhoods and low education, and you look at the impact of incarceration, mass incarceration, when we look at that, where is a balance here? There is none. When you look at laws, in particular here in the state of Ohio, we have a felony murder rule. I might have committed the crime, and Zaria and Robin could have been there. They're going to be sentenced just like I am, but they didn't do it. How is that fair? And then how do we measure somebody being restored? How do you measure that when my life has not changed? I cannot change economical tracts. I can't go to school if I sold drugs, and all of these things that are sanctions. Here in Ohio, we have over 800 sanctions when a person has done their time and now get out. There's all these sanctions that are attached to them, and all of these stigmas, you know, ex-offender, all of these stigmas. Where is restoration at anyhow? I don't see that. And for me, and from my perspective, true restoration can only come from God. It can only come from God because he has the power to restore life. He has the power to redeem time that people have lost when they are caught up in that system. And we have to look to our faith as the guiding principle of a true restoration, and then use that voice to begin to implement change in this system that is not designed for restoration. We got to be honest, and we got to call it for what it is. The system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is not broken. It was built like it is to do what it has done. But we get on this tangent that it's broken and we got to fix the system. No, we got to tear it down, right? We have to tear it down and build one from a foundation that first sits on faith. Because if God has the power to forgive someone, how are we as human beings not willing to do that? Or give a person a second chance, or give a person another chance to rebuild and restructure their lives without the tools necessary to do that. So, you know, there's a lot of good work being done around restorative justice, but we need an overhaul for restorative justice.
All right. Thank you, all three of you. Good perspectives. Let's move on to the next question about advocacy. The pandemic has really shifted our focus to a highly local response. How is reentry advocacy, and the focus, I guess, here is reentry advocacy, different in each of these community contexts, local, state, and national? Well, Dr. Palmer, why don't you go first? So you're,
I was gonna say either myself or Robin can go if you don't.
It don't matter.
Okay, all right, Robin, you've got your hand up. Go right ahead, Robin.
Okay, so for the second question, so what I've been doing, maybe for the last couple, I would say maybe 2 weeks, I have been able to meet more in person. So with that, I always have a thing around the power of educating. So the power of educating, for me, it looks like advocacy, and then from advocacy, mobilizing, and then from mobilizing, organizing, in regards to just being able to make those connections locally, because I'm feet on the ground here in Cleveland, but throughout the state, I may be on this panel, sit on this board, this, and then nationally, I'm a part of some things as well. So I always start in regards to my efforts as the power of educating, going from advocacy, mobilizing, organizing. Basically, if you teach a man to fish, he's going to eat forever. But if you fish for that man, he'll only eat for a day.
I was gonna say, So I do work on all three levels. And I agree, like with everything that's currently going on, it's critical that people are educated and equipped, right? So it's not just like, let me come in and lecture you, but it's critical for us to have change and action in place, that we give people the tools, right, and the resources that they need to be able to make those changes. And so a big piece of that here in Ohio comes in a form of like really educating people, and as Robin mentioned, mobilizing people. I'm all about action. I'm so tired of the empty promises and all these little shows that people want to put on, you know, around Black Lives Matter or addressing the pandemic and how the health disparities exist within, you know, Black communities, and then the numbers of COVID in our jails and prisons here. All of these things are going on right now. You know, we're dealing with right now as advocates in our state of Ohio. And so we can't do it alone. We have to have a base to be able to build. And so even when we talk about reentry, how are people, first of all, people aren't being released when they should be. Let's just start there. And then when they are being released, there is no real plan. And so there has to be a reentry plan. There has to be something to address these issues. So nationally, different groups from the state here have been working with Just Leadership around addressing the fact that there is no emergency plan in place. And so they actually launched a campaign called Just Us. And so there are a lot of advocates throughout the state of Ohio working with that, because Ohio is one of the focus areas because of the amount of COVID cases we've had in our prisons. And so we've been talking about how do we develop a plan to address these emergency situations, and what does that look like? So not just with COVID, but you know, it could be some kind of natural disaster. It could be all kinds of things that are going to impact not only what's happening inside, but as people are transitioning home. And so how do we put the measures in place to make sure that people have housing and they have all these things they need? Because I was having people write me saying that although they were eligible to be released, because they didn't have stable housing and halfway house wasn't taking new people, and you know, all these barriers were coming up. So it's like, we can't stop moving, we can't stop releasing people because of this. We need to come up with a plan on how we're going to address this. And so I think that that's when advocacy steps in. That's when people who've already been inside, who we've all gone through some kind of crisis when we were inside, right? And it may not look like this. In my mind, I kept thinking when COVID hit, let me think about the worst situation I had and then multiply it times like 50, because they were crammed in places, they weren't able to socially distance. There were all these different issues happening. So when we talk about, you know, advocacy, we're not only advocating for like, okay, we want people released, but we also want people to be safe while they're inside. That's just as critical. So we want people to transition home safely. We don't want them coming home with COVID and then giving it to their families, or, you know, we want to make sure that there are solid plans in place, both inside as well as when they're transitioning home. So I think that locally, when we're talking about the jails, when we're talking about statewide with the prisons, when we're talking about federally with prisons and reentry on all levels, we have to really have a solid plan and listen to the voices of the people inside and the people who've been inside, and not be and don't get it twisted. You got two people who have a whole, and I know Robin got her education, all of us got education, you know, and some after incarceration, me, you know, before and right before, but it's like, you have to be willing to have us at the table to actually say, this is what we're hearing inside. This is what is happening with people who are transitioning. And what we have oftentimes is scholars who have no direct connection, who feel like they are the authority on everything, you know, with the criminal legal system, trying to tell everybody else how to make these decisions. So that's where advocacy and hearing the voices of those impacted is critical in these spaces.
Thank you very much. All right.
Mrs. Amelia, I don't think nothing should happen for us without us.
Ah,
I don't think nothing should happen for us without us at the table. I don't think nobody who hasn't walked in some facet of being incarcerated should make decisions for people being incarcerated, coming home and still at home. There's still things that we all need, being impacted individuals, even myself, healing, a slew of things that never is talked about it, but the moment something happens, then it's a whole whirlwind of things of why. why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? But I don't think a decision should be made for us without us. Sorry about that, Dr. Palmer.
Girl, you're right. I love that because I use that all the time. Remember FUBU back in the day, for us, by us, right? And so I agree with that 100%. I think to me, COVID-19 leveled the playing ground. Period. It didn't matter what white, black, poor, incarcerated, free, didn't matter. It affected any and every household.
Right.
You couldn't buy your way out of it. You couldn't white privilege your way out of it. It happened, period. And I think, for me, it leveled the playing ground, but it also opened our eyes to a lot of disparities.
Right.
When you think of people that are incarcerated, and I'll share this, I had a son that was incarcerated during that time. And I was able not only to talk to him and hear him, but other people, other family members would call me and tell me of the conditions and things that were going on inside while we were being told something different out here, right? The danger and the fear, psychologically and emotionally, think about that impact of it for them. They didn't understand what was going on. They had very little information about what COVID-19 was. All they know is that the world has shut down.
Yeah.
When they shut down the NBA, everybody stopped and took notice, like, whoa, wait a minute, right? They were struggling and still are psychologically and emotionally because of their space, 2.4 cubic space in the state of Ohio.
Gosh. There's
no social distancing. Family members' visitation was shut off. Imagine that for a person that had a visit every week for 5 years, and now there's nothing, no personal contact, no personal encouragement from loved ones and family members. Okay, you talk on the phone, that's one thing. JPay, that doesn't really work well. The video conferencing is not all that. It goes in and out, so that's not a solution to it. And yet, they're watching people being taken out of their pod, out of their unit, to some other unit. And then they watched tents be put up where they were serving people outside in tents. They were panicking in there. What did we do as a society in response to that panic for them? Still, we've done nothing. In my opinion, we have not done enough. And so advocacy at this level, locally and state-wise, is imperative right now because people are afraid. People have died. Inmates have died, correctional officers have died, and there are people that are still dealing with the aftermath of COVID-19 inside of our institutions. And our voices have to be heard. We as a society, we must come together. It's not about this organization, that organization, this government entity, this faith base, but us together with one collective voice will bring a power that will bring change. All these different silos of where I'm over here advocating, you're over there advocating. No, all of us together to advocate and stand, we will watch things change. And that's what COVID-19 done. It showed us what they could do overnight if they wanted to. When they sent relief money, they said it wasn't possible, but did they not find billions of dollars to send out? Did they not find money to help organizations and companies stay afloat? So when they say what they can't do, we watched them when COVID-19 hit. Money came out of nowhere, right? There was things being done to help people. There's still money right now floating all around, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars for housing and emergency assistance and all of these things that was not available. So they say before, but COVID-19 brought it out. So when you watch government make new decisions and change policies in a matter of days, you can't tell me what we can't do if our voices are together and we have one voice calling for that systematic change. That's what COVID-19, in my opinion, has done. It's raised our awareness to raise our level of advocacy together so that we can bring that change that's necessary. I'm gonna settle down.
Thank you. Yeah, well, and that really leads into, you're beginning to answer the next question, which is where do you see opportunities for restored citizens to use their voices and actually be heard? to bring about systemic and structural change. But I'm thinking about what you're saying about our collective voice. You know, how do we make that happen? How do we not just be working in our silos, but speak with one voice? So I guess we could go with either of those. You know, how can restorative citizens like yourselves have their voices be heard so that change will happen, as well as how do we come together?
I just think that it's about us changing our perspective, and that being a collective voice. There is, you know, there's an old African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. I take it to a further extent and say it takes a village to raise a champion, right? And as Robin said, we have this lived experience. We've been in the system. We've broken those barriers, those challenges. We've rebuilt, restructured our lives, and still got things that we're dealing with. Even in all the restructuring and rebuilding that we have done personally in our own lives, there's still barriers and challenges that we face. But if we could come together as a collective voice, it brings about a power that will not be denied. And for me, I think of it in this way. You know, one person cannot do it because they're too small. One organization cannot do it because they're too small. One government entity cannot do it because it's too small. One court system or judge or jurisdiction cannot do it because it's too small. One family cannot do it because it's too small. But together we have the power to bring systematic change. And that's it, our collective voice, us coming together collectively, Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus, Cleveland, together, different organizations, we all are on this same page and we're all pushing this same thing. We'll see something happen. Collective voice is what I say.
You want to weigh in on that, Robin, or?
Dr. Palmer, you said you was gonna calm down, but you didn't. I'm so glad that you didn't calm down, sister. You fired up. You fired up. You was like, I'm gonna calm down. No, this ain't the point where we calm down, Dr. Palmer. This ain't the point. So, for myself, I'm in total agreement with what Dr. Palmer said. Being able to collaborate within the state, across certain regions, maybe developing a city-to-city call, maybe once or twice a month, to kind of get on the same align on the same agenda, to be able to come together as a whole state. Once we're able to come together as a whole state, piggybacking off what Dr. Palmer said, then we start reaching out to our constituents in other states to have a few states together in regards to being able to attack and being heard on a more system, structural level around what we want to see in regards to change. Again, nothing happens for us without us. We have to be we not only have to have a seat at the table, we got to be at the table. We got to be there. It's imperative that the people who have been directly impacted is at the table. Can no decisions be made for us without us?
Great, thank you.
That's what's been happening, Miss Boomershine.
Decisions have been made without
Exactly.
by, I don't know,
Exactly.
scholars somebody mentioned, or people who haven't had the experience and really know what it's like and what's needed.
We're still being criminalized because we Black. Yeah. We're still being criminalized on a high level because we're Black, because we're poor. Yeah. Because when they run my name, they already see X, Y, and Z. I'm criminalized because of my past. So I can come out and be as successful as it may look. But it's still a certain fear that I hold on to just being a Black woman. Yeah. Here in the city of Cleveland, where the homicide rate has tripled during COVID, where every other day they found the bodies in the field. I'm being criminalized because I'm poor, I'm Black. So how do we address that?
Not right. Well, this is one venue that we're coming together. Maybe conversations can continue.
I hope this ain't our last time, Ms. Boomershine. I hope this ain't our last time you write down our information, taking our information, and we'll see you again. I hope we can agree to a commitment, you know, to move things further, Mrs. Boomershine. You're a great moderator, but I hope this ain't my last time seeing you. I'm just gonna throw that out there for you, man.
It won't be, Robin. It won't be. I can attest to that. It won't be.
Well, then I know I'm good, then. done spoke. You know I trust you. So you done spoke. So
she's on it. She's on it. We've actually worked together. She is really awesome with bringing her people and really empowering them to gain education and knowledge. And so I just want to shout you out real quick for that, because a lot of groups don't do that, right? They don't want to necessarily hear. They just want to tell you what they think you need to hear.
You good, Mrs. Boomershine. You've been validated by one of my sisters, Miss Boomershine. You good. You all the way. We gotta pull Dr. Patrice Palmer in. Make sure she good and fired up. You good, Miss Boomershine.
Okay, let's move on to question number 4. I can rest easy tonight. No, thank you all. All right, regarding creating a better community response to successful reentry, where do you see the greatest opportunities in advocacy? Where should our focus and energies be?
Can I'm gonna answer this, but I just want to say that as we were talking about the collective piece, like I'm really big on, and Patrice will tell you, like is a part of like training that we've had through Just Leadership. We talk a lot about collective leadership, and I think that's critical. I think that there have been some groups that have formed in the state that are looking to address certain issues, and I'm going to drop one of the names in. There's a Decarcerated Ohio working group. It is not necessarily led by formerly incarcerated people, but it's kind of a mix of different advocacy organizations and groups that really came together during COVID, right? So we all kind of interacted with one another prior to COVID in different spaces. But the meetings are happening every other week now, and there are some specific areas that are looking to be addressed. So I just want to lift that up as it relates to some of the pieces. But I want to say that it is going to be critical for there to be some specific people who are directly impacted leading this change, because right now we have a variety of different organizations and groups that kind of send their reps to different spaces and participate in these conversations, and there are very few of us that are directly impacted in those spaces. Oh. I could probably count them on one hand. But as we're looking at opportunities to advocate right now here in Ohio, we aren't getting a lot of stuff passed because of the structure of our current government. A lot of the bills that have been submitted that would help create change in our criminal legal system are not even making it to the floor. Right. So I think that a big part of it is going to be voting in a few weeks, and really voting for people who are showing, not just saying, but showing that they are about change. But I think that right now a big piece that we're still talking about is COVID in the jails and the prisons, and how people are being treated in healthcare. And so all of these things intersect with one another. So the healthcare piece, the incarceration piece, the fact that people are still being detained in the jails for very low-level charges because they don't have the finances, as Robin just talked about poverty, right? So they don't have the finances and the resources to get out. So I think that those are the kind of things that we have to look at. So why do we have people sitting in jail that could be out on their own recognizance? Because we've always done it that way, right? That's not a reason. You know, we have to look at people's ability to pay. We have to look at, is this person going to return to court? Those are the things that, that's honestly how it was set up. So when we talk about what are we going to be advocating for, we need to be decarcerating these jails and prisons, not having people in cages when they don't need to be, these overcrowded jails. And I think in all of our areas, there's some type of jail fight or bail reform fight that's happening. And those are like major things that I'm hearing just in my work in the pretrial side. I also think that it's really going to be important for us to make sure that across the board we have the resources and supports for people coming home. Because if we're talking about decarcerating jails and prisons, that means we need to have the resources and supports. And I know Dr. Palmer is here for her full-time, but she also is a leader in her own right as a nonprofit founder. And I think that it's organizations like hers. I have an organization that I've recently launched called Filling the Gap, that we're going to have to come together to figure out, like, how do we provide supports for the people that are coming home and to feed them into the base that Robin talked about, right? Like getting that base active and mobilized. And I think it's really about advocating for what the people identify are issues or concerns for them. And it's not up to us to say, like, this is what we think people should advocate for, but really what they identify. So I just wanted to lift that up because I know that there's been a lot of efforts around the decarceration piece, not just with COVID, but in general because of the state and conditions of our jails and prisons here in Ohio.
Hey, Dr. Zaria, can I piggyback off a little bit of that?
Go
I think based off of what you just said, I think it's something that should happen before that they're on the side in regards to us potentially being able to go in and transition them onto this other side to make the transition a lot smoother around resources. If they need a birth certificate, a social security card, if they need transportation, where you're staying. I think that's a process we should talk about, you, me, Dr. Palmer, Ms. Boomershine, and some other people around organizing, kind of mobilizing people before that they're on this particular side, so they're not kind of dropped and lost, because a lot of times people fall in between the cracks once they get out, saying, hey, well, let me go back potentially to the same situation that got me incarcerated because I didn't hear from this reentry place or that reentry place. So I think it'll be more or less of us following up with them to follow up with what they need to happen for them before they come out. But I think organizing while they're in is a huge step to make sure that they're organized once they're out.
Yeah.
I want to just piggyback on your piggyback. That is exactly what the organization that I just started is doing. I know Dr. Palmer, she is doing some really awesome work in her area around that piece. Like, she's engaging people prior to coming home, and maybe she can just speak a little bit more to that. But I think that is critical. You're right. We can't wait for people to get home and try to catch them, right? Like, we got to get them before they get home so that we can actually, I mean, there has to be hand holding to me in that transitional stage, because so many people, that's why my organization is called Filling the Gap, because I was like, they're getting lost in that space, and we have to make sure that we have that bridge to make sure that they get what they need. So I'm going to let Dr. Palmer, I ain't gonna keep speaking for her organization. But
let me just say, I didn't really give each of you a chance to talk about your organization. So let's start with you, Dr. Palmer, and you kind of lift up what you do as a.
So actually, I have a nonprofit organization called Chosen for Change, and we work with people coming home. We work with them actually at the beginning stages. To me, when your criminal justice involved, it starts with your arrest. It starts there, and we walk through the process with them. People that go to prison, that go to treatment centers. We work with their families, and we partner with Loop, which is Loved Ones of Prisoners, another organization that meets the needs of family members. If they need a ride to the institution, they try to coordinate that ride. They do a lot of advocacy work as far as when there's legislation going on. They go to help support that. So I work really closely with several of our senators. I'm a person they talk to when they need to know some things. I don't bite my tongue. I get in trouble a lot because I just have to be honest on what it is and not what you want to hear. So Chosen for Change is about helping people to know that good people make poor choices and decisions in life, but it doesn't mean you're a bad person. But what are you going to do with that? Where are we going to start from here? What do you want to do now that you have done whatever it is, or if you're in the system, what's the next step? And how do you want to restructure, rebuild your life? So, we don't spend a lot of time on talking about, what got people where they are. It's what do you want to do from there? So I go across the country, actually. I've spoken in different areas, different spaces. I'm a Just Leadership 2016 cohort member of the inaugural group, worked very closely with Glenn Martin. And so it was just very, very instrumental in developing my leadership skills and qualities and being able to help people. I'm a servant first and foremost, and that's my job. I'm a repairer of the breach. And so I believe that people can reach, the sky is the limit, in my opinion. No dream is too small. I believe that people can accomplish great things. And I don't allow my past fears or failures to dictate my future possibilities. And so that's the empowerment that I give to others. And I do that through Chosen for Change. Is that good? Zaria. Woo!
I'm muted. I'm saying that's very good. Thank you. Great explanation. Very inspiring, the work, and so important, the work that that organization is doing. Thank you. Dr. Davis, you want to tell us about what pretrial justice?
So my organization, Filling the Gap, was started last year. It's really been something that I have been carrying with me since my incarceration, but it wasn't time for it to be birthed until last year. So I've been carrying it for a few years with me, but really excited because I am working with our local reentry office, another organization that was just recently launched, which is called Faith Freedom Life, it sounds similar to the organization working with families. So they work with the families, and I'm working specifically with women right now who are currently in the system and in the process of coming home. I was slated to go into the prisons right before COVID hit to get started. So I am transitioning a lot of things to virtual because we do a lot of educational support. We are part of the Unlock Higher Ed Coalition, so really pushing to get women who are interested in seeking higher education in that space and providing opportunities for them to also get scholarship money for school. So I'm working with the organization based out of Baltimore, from prison cell to PhD, and somewhat modeling their program, as well as there's a mentor component and also a component dealing with trauma, and looking to partner with another local agency that works specifically around victimization. So just getting my feet wet, but looking to Dr. Palmer and other programs and the awesome work that they're doing to kind of see how we can collaborate, as well as just providing them resources and supports for my area of the state. So that's a little bit about mine.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Turner, I know you're working with the Ohio Organizing Committee, or Collaborative?
Collaborative.
Collaborative, thank you. And I was excited about that because I've kind of plugged in with the group here in Dayton.
Edwin?
With Edwin, with regard with the Jail Coalition and Advocacy here. So go ahead and tell us about your work with that organization.
So I'm criminal justice organizer here in the city of Cleveland. So Ohio Organizing Collaborative is a statewide organization that kind of focuses around different issues that keep Black and brown people at a disadvantage. They have groups such as AMIS, who I want to say is a faith organization. They have OSA that has to do with students. And so what we just did, maybe within the last 60 days, created something called BFO, Building Freedom Ohio. And so that's going to be, Edwin is going to have a chapter in Dayton, and I'll have a chapter up here in Cleveland, just basically focusing on the people who have been directly impacted, meaning incarcerated, giving them a space, just a space for them, not a space where it's other people, but just a space specifically for them, because I felt like people who have been directly impacted need their own space, period, outside of anything else. So yeah, so that's kind of we partner with different organizations, union organizations, faith organizations, judicial organizations. So yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at now.
That's great. So you're really living that collaboration that that you're advocating for. So
That's why I'm trying to collaborate. Make sure we collaborate, Miss Boomershine.
Yeah. Okay, we have one more question, and we have, let's see, we have about 5 more minutes. So this last question here is, how do you know when you are ready to use your voice and sustain efforts for the long haul?
I want to say that using your voice, number one, you have to know you have a responsibility, right? If something goes left of center, all the work that we're doing takes a hit. So I have a responsibility to be true to myself, be honest with what I'm doing, and be committed to it. From my perspective, I think people need a history of doing well, of being committed, whether that's their recovery, whether that's addressing mental health issues, and rebuilding and restructuring. You don't take a baby and give a baby a steak to eat because they cannot digest it, right? So it's the same with people coming home. You gotta get underneath somebody's mentorship to help guide you and direct you. Because mind you, some people go to prison and they have that aha moment and they want to come out and bam, but they don't have the tools necessary to restructure their lives and their thinking and their focus. And when you put somebody out that is immature, it can harm the work that you are doing. So my suggestion, number one, would be to find mentors that are doing the work, such as Robin and Zaria, and there are many across the state of Ohio, across this country, and get connected to a group that is doing the work, and that are boots to the ground, and they are doing what they want, what they say they are going to do, that helps move the work that we are doing, and not just come out rogue and just, I'm just going to go out here. It's not about that. And you want to be careful sharing your story, that you share it from a place of strength and not a place of victimized, or you want self-pity, or, oh my, this is what happened. But you share your story from a place of strength and a place of courage. That's what brings systematic change. So that's what I would suggest.
So for me, I totally agree with the mentoring piece. I think you have to meet people where they are. So you do have, and I was one of those people, like I came home like, all right, what do I need to do? What's going on? Let me just jump in. And it took a local advocate who's now a national advocate, Deanna Hoskins, who's from Cincinnati, who grew up with my cousins, to kind of have a real conversation with me, like, okay, hold up, wait a second, before you just, as Patrice said, just go run off. She's like, you need to get plugged in, you need to see what's happening, you need to learn. And so she actually referred me to 2 organizations when I initially got home, Just Leadership being one of them, and the National Council for Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls is the second. And actually they're having a conference the next 2 days, today and tomorrow. So it's conference season. But I was really fortunate and just really blessed to have some people who from that point took me in and mentored me. Then I got plugged into the formerly incarcerated convicted people family movement and attended a conference 2 years ago. And that was really an eye-opener for me. That, as well as attending emerging leaders through Just Leadership prior to getting accepted into Leading with Conviction. And so it was steps for me, right? It wasn't like I just jumped out here and became, this like super advocate or anything. It took time. It took me really learning and understanding how to use my voice. And so I got plugged in with national organizations. I have mentors in this work. I know you mentioned Glenn Martin. He is an awesome mentor, and I appreciate him. And just getting involved with some local efforts as well is what I would say, and just learning from the people who are already in these spaces is going to be critical. And just observing. I think watching is critical, like seeing what's actually happening in your local politics and advocacy spaces, statewide as well as nationally.
Great, thank you. Ms. Turner, you get the last word on this. Your thoughts about How do you know when you're ready to use your voice as a returning citizen and sustain efforts for the long haul?
So I knew upon being released that I had to do something. I just didn't know what. And I didn't really have my how at that particular moment. So once I came out, I was initially I was invited to it was called a mass incarceration boot camp, which I thought was interesting. I'm like, mass incarceration boot camp? I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I gotta really just check this out. So I was invited by a mentor to me, still to this day, Demario Cooper. Before OOC was OOC, it was MVOC, Mahoney Valley Organizing Collaborative. So it was up in Youngstown. I went for the weekend. And from the moment my first plenary, my first breakout session, I knew that this was the platform that I need to be on in order to be able to assist others. So from that particular moment, from that particular time, I always stayed connected in regards to how can I volunteer? What can I do? What needs to happen? How can I reach out? So I did that for some years, and then I started going to these conferences with Eddie Moore around I don't know if it was white supremacists, white privilege, the white privilege conference. I started attending those conferences on a yearly basis. So with me seeing that platform and me being a part of this mass incarceration platform, I knew that it was time. So I would call up some people who I was previously incarcerated. I would speak to mentors. I would do this. And like a couple years ago, I just stepped directly into the work. Like I left a corporate America and I said, I never want to go back to corporate America. I just felt like that people would be able to use me more just where I'm at in regards to my experiences and boots on the ground.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I'm sorry to say our time is up. Robin Turner, Zaria Davis, Patrice Palmer, thank you so much for giving of your time and your experience and your expertise to enlighten and encourage us. And God bless you, all three of you. Thank you, those who've joined us today, and check out what's coming up next in the conference. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.